What is backlog and why is the number so important? Let me tell you about two companies I worked around the same time. Company A did $30 million in revenue last year. Company B also did $30 million. Same size, same industry, similar products. But here's the difference. Company A started this year with $8 million already locked in from existing contracts. And Company B started with almost nothing. They had to sell everything fresh. Which company do you think had a better year? Company A hit their numbers. They had breathing room, their sales team could focus on growth instead of just survival. Company B, on the other hand, they struggled all year. Every quarter was a scramble. They made it barely, but the stress, it was constant. The difference was the backlog. Company A had it, but Company B did not. I'm Hindal. I have been a CFO for over 25 years. I've seen these things play out. Today I want to talk about backlog, what it is, why it matters, and why it might be the most important number you are not paying enough attention to. So let's get into it. What is backlog? Let's start with the basics. Backlog is contracted revenue that you have not recognized yet. It's money that the customers have committed to pay you, but you haven't delivered the service or the product yet. Think of it this way. A customer signs a 3-year contract worth $300,000. That's about what, $100,000 per year. In year one, you recognize 100K as revenue, but you still have another $200,000 sitting in backlog. That is revenue you are going to recognize in the years 2 and 3. Backlog is sometimes called remaining performance obligation in accounting terms, or RPO. You will see it in public company filings. It's the total value of contracts that have not been fulfilled yet. Now, there is an important distinction here. Backlog is different from deferred revenue. Deferred revenue is money you already have. You have already collected that money, but you have not recognized it yet. The cash is in the bank, but you have not done the work. Backlog includes deferred revenue, but it also includes contracted amounts that have not been billed or collected yet. It is really the future obligation regardless of whether cash has changed hands. So for a subscription business, backlog basically tells you if we never sold another deal, how much revenue would we still recognize from existing contracts? It's a very simple way to look at it. And it's a powerful number to know. So why does backlog matter? And why should you care about backlog? Let me give you a few reasons for that. First, it is a visibility. Backlog tells you how much of your future revenue is already locked in. If you need to do $40 million next year and you're starting with $25 million in backlog, you only need to sell $15 million. That is very different from starting at zero. Second is predictability. When you have strong backlog, your revenue becomes more predictable. You are not dependent on closing new deals to hit your number. You have a foundation to build on, and this makes planning a lot easier for headcount, for cash flow, and for everything else. Third, it's a signal of business health. Growing backlog usually means what? Customers are signing longer contracts or bigger contracts or both. And that's a sign of confidence in your product. Shrinking backlog might mean that the customers are hedging. They're signing shorter deals. They're keeping their options open. And fourth, investors care about it. If you're raising money or thinking about selling the company, backlog is one of the first things that sophisticated investors are going to look at. It tells them how much more of your revenue is in the bag versus dependent on future sales execution. Fifth, it affects valuation. A company with $30 million in revenue and $50 million in backlog is worth more than a company with $30 million in revenue and $10 million in backlog. The first company has more certain future cash flows, and that certainty is valuable. And sixth, it helps you manage risk. If the market turns bad or you lose some key salespeople, backlog is your buffer, it's your cushion. You can survive a bad quarter or two if you have enough contracted revenue to sustain you. So how do you build backlog? Let me talk about how backlog actually builds, because understanding this helps you manage it. The biggest driver is contract length. If your average contract is 1 year and your backlog will be modest, basically whatever hasn't been recognized yet from current year contracts, But if your average contract is 3 years and your backlog grows much larger relative to your annual revenue, then it matters. This is why enterprise software companies often have huge backlog numbers. They sign multi-year deals. A company doing $100 million in annual revenue might have $300 million in backlog simply because most of their contracts are 3 years. The second driver is timing. Backlog peaks right after you close a big deal and then declines as you recognize the revenue. It burns. So there's a natural sawtooth pattern, up when you close, down as you deliver. And the third driver is renewals. When a customer renews, their contract goes back into backlog. Strong renewal rates keep backlog healthy. Poor renewal rates, it lets it erode. The fourth driver is expansion. If existing customers, they buy more, they add users, they upgrade to a higher tier, they purchase additional products, that adds to backlog. So if you want to grow backlog, you have few levers: longer contract terms, higher renewal rates, and more expansion within the existing accounts. New logo acquisition matters as well, but those other factors that I just mentioned, they often have a bigger impact on backlog specifically. So how do you calculate and track backlog? Let me get practical about how to calculate and track the backlog components. At its simplest, backlog is a total contracted value minus the revenue you have already recognized. If a customer has $120,000 2-year contract and you have recognized $30,000 so far, the remaining backlog for that customer is what? $90,000. Now you add that up across all your customers and you have the total backlog. Now most accounting systems, they will track this for you, especially if you're using revenue recognition software. But I always recommend building your own view of backlog, broken down in ways that help you manage the business. Backlog by customer. Who are your biggest backlog concentrations? If one customer is 30% of your backlog, that's a risk. Backlog by cohort is important. How does backlog from customers acquired this year compared to last year? Are you signing bigger deals or smaller ones? Backlog by contract end date. When does your backlog come up for renewal? If a huge chunk of backlog renews in Q4, you need to be ready. Backlog coverage. This is a very key metric. Take your backlog and divide by your annual revenue and run rate, or annual revenue run rate. If backlog is $80 million and annual revenue is $40 million, you have 2x coverage. That means roughly you have 2 years of revenue already contracted. I also like to track what I call in-year backlog. And what does that mean? How much of this year's revenue target is already in the backlog? If you need $50 million this year and you started with $35 million in backlog, you have got 70% coverage, and that's a good place to be. Backlog versus bookings versus revenue. Let me clarify some terms because people sometimes get confused. Booking is the total value of contracts that you have signed in a period. If you signed $10 million in new contracts this quarter, your bookings are $10 million. Revenue is what you recognize in a period based on delivery. If you delivered $8 million worth of services this quarter, your revenue was $8 million. But backlog is a cumulative contracted value waiting to be recognized. It goes up when bookings exceed revenue, and it goes down when revenue exceeds bookings. So think of it like a bathtub. Bookings are the water flowing in, revenue is the water draining out, and backlog is the water level in the tub. If you're signing new contracts faster than you're recognizing revenue, your backlog is going up, the tub is filling up. If you're recognizing revenue faster than you're signing new deals, your backlog is falling. Your tub is draining. Healthy growth means bookings consistently exceed revenue. And the backlog keeps building. The flat backlog or declining backlog is a very dangerous sign. You don't want to live off old contracts. Otherwise, you have to keep on signing new business. So keep an eye on for all three: bookings to understand sales productivity, revenue to understand current period performance, and backlog to understand visibility. So what are the key takeaways from this? Let me wrap it up in three key elements. Number one, backlog is contracted revenue you have not recognized yet. It tells you how much of your future is already locked in. The higher your backlog relative to revenue, the more visibility and predictability you have. Number two, backlog builds through longer contracts, stronger renewals, and customer expansion. If you want more backlog, focus on these levers, not just new logo acquisition. And number 3, track backlog coverage. How much of your target is already contracted? Also track the backlog by customer, by cohort, and by renewal date. These views help you spot risks and opportunities. Backlog is a number that lets you sleep at night. When it is strong, you have got a cushion. When it's weak, every quarter is a scramble. In the next video, I'm going to talk about how much backlog you should actually have. What is too little, what is healthy, and whether there is such thing as too much. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Bye-bye.